Well, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see our experts and their team from TAP-EDM. And in this great, initiative that I see it's been in the works for a couple of years and talking about the SDGs, so promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. And we're going to share with you some great experiences over the next 45 minutes. So that's great. We'll get right into it. So welcome everyone. And very nice to see some of you, and we'll chat a little bit about that. So my name is Christopher Yeomans. I'm the project director for Alinea International, which is a consulting firm that delivers international cooperation and international development projects around the world. We can go to the next slide. And I've been with this organization with this company for the last couple of years and came on to deliver TAP-EDM, which is the Technical Assistance Partnership. It's an expert deployment mechanism. So before I get into talking a little bit more about who we are, I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge and that the project and Alinea acknowledge that our teams are located across the lands known as Canada, as the traditional territories and lands of the First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout generations and millennia. We respect and affirm the inherent treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land and commit to walk in solidarity on a path to genuine reconciliation. TAP-EDM commits to ensuring our teams conduct their programming in a manner that delivers on the calls of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And in fact, we actually have projects that directly contribute to this, working with Indigenous peoples in Ecuador, for instance, where we're very much implementing that and helping First Nations, Indigenous peoples of that territory and traditional lands and negotiations with the national government there. So thank you. We can move on to the next one. So this is a bit of the agenda presentation for what we're going to be doing today. I'll give sort of a bit of a preamble for the next 5 or so, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. And we'll talk a little bit about what the project is and how the project is specifically contributing to the Sustainable Development Objectives. And then I will turn it over to our Canadian experts. We're going to speak to you about how they are contributing to the SDGs, and we'll try to open it up for some discussion and some Q&As. And I would encourage everyone to actually use the chat box, right? We've got Joseph and Gabrielle who are going to be monitoring, 2 members of our team based in Ottawa. And today, by the way, I'm coming to you from the traditional lands of many different First Nations groups, but the Musqueam and from the Coast Salish tribes and different groups, as well as the Squamish that I'm sure also have lots of stakes in this area in Vancouver. So, and I know we're all over the country, which is really great, and I'm really happy to be here today. So next slide, please. And I'm just going to sort of give you a little bit of who we are and what we do in the international development sector. So Alinea International is a private consulting firm with offices in the UK, Australia, and Canada. A couple offices, one in Gatineau and one in Calgary, where our base is. We've been operating for 35 years. We have over 400 employees around the world in, I'd say, 17 different offices that we had. And I just got the latest news from, because kind of, opening and closing projects a lot. And, yeah, we design, we deliver, we evaluate high impact social, economic, donor investments. So we work a lot with organizations like Global Affairs Canada, but also FCDO, which is the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, department, I'm not sure, but it's the UK version of GAC, and other donors as well, with the Australians as well, DFAT in Australia, as well as other international donors that provide funding to implement international development initiatives like TAP-EDM, which is a specific type. It's an expert deployment mechanism of Canadians that we go and we search around the world to do. So I've kind of covered most of this. Yeah, we've got, lots. That's a bit of the glance. So we can move to the next one. But yeah, we've implemented over 500 projects over the last 35 years. So TAP-EDM is a little bit different because it's a type of mechanism where we source Canadian experts. We'll go back one. We source Canadian experts from across the country to be involved up to 12 months of providing technical assistance in right now operating in about 36 countries. We have 57 of them. We'll probably get up to by the end of next year, we'll be up to between 75 or close to 70 initiatives that we'll be implementing. And right now we have about 60 Canadian experts that are involved with us over the course of the project. It's a 4-year project. It's worth roughly about $20 million to the Canadian government. It's funded by Global Affairs Canada for the government of Canada. And of course, as I mentioned before, Alinea International is an implementing agency that works under contract in this one for GAC. The next, please. So all of our initiatives contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. It's very much stated. We work with national government entities, so the Ministry of Mines or the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Finance, to really contribute to the one of 17. Many of them have even more than one, but we generally have one that contributes very significantly to one of these SDGs. Next, please. And I kind of mentioned, yes, so 57 initiatives over 36 countries. We're working in Latin America, in Asia, Caribbean. We're working in parts of Africa, North Africa, and the Middle East as well, Sub-Saharan and North Africa, which is kind of interesting. We also were very much grounded in the Feminist International Assistance Policy, which is the FIAP, that emphasizes gender equality and empowering women and girls. We contribute to all six. We contribute to all 6 of those action areas. And we're really, what's interesting about this is that we're really responding to the needs of these government institutions around the world. Next, please. So very briefly, in working with the FIAP, the Feminist International Assistance Policy, we're also always integrating gender equality, social inclusion, governance, accountability, and human rights, and very conscious of our environmental impact, and also how we're impacting climate, on climate change. And often many of our initiatives are directly contributing to climate action in this area. Next, please. So, of the key objectives that we're working for, TAP responds to the needs of countries eligible for official development assistance. We're aiming, to really engage Canadians and contribute in their global citizenship through these deployments of high functioning people, Canadians that have a very degree of expertise in a number of different areas. And we're really contributing to Canada's presence around the world, our international assistance, but also our bilateral relationship, and strengthening that bilateral relationship with our government partners. And this is something that our experts will speak to you a little bit about as well. So TAP, that was just a pit photo of one of the projects that we had in this. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm kind of going to bring in our different experts who are going to speak to how they are contributing to the SDGs and where we're contributing, to, some of them that we really mentioned, but, primarily working towards SDG 5, which is gender equality. We're contributing a lot to SDG, is it I want to say, around climate action, and some of the others. We'll listen to that as we go forward, and we'll try to have some discussion afterwards. So we're going to start with Wayne Hissong. He's our senior law enforcement expert, originally from the Deep South in the U.S., but is working with Andrea, who is they've been working together for quite some time, the last number of 20 years, I'd say, and really gone around the world to work on, and we can go to the next slide, I think, have traveled around the world in many different areas to really develop the capacity of law enforcement. And in this project, developing the capacity of law enforcement that are helping deal with the issue of human trafficking. And there's a very strong gendered impact on human trafficking.
Chris, I'll invite you to introduce all of them, and then they'll just go one after the other to do their presentation.
Fantastic. So then we have Sally Yakub, who is coming to us from Montreal, and she's working with us in Tunisia around gender equality, and really interesting program of developing one of the ministries that's involved in helping, women entrepreneurs, and some important work there, and just is back from that. So thank you, Sally. We've got Philip, who's an international development economist and has been working quite a bit in Central America, and he's working with Guatemala and helping us contribute to really, integrating gender analysis, gender data analysis, and helping us deal with a very important problem around sexual gender-based violence in that country. So this is a really important piece of work as well. And then Litsi and Alondra are helping gender equity, inclusion experts, diversity from Edmonton. I believe they both live in Edmonton, and they are working to help the Ministry of Mines really apply and think about how we make that sector, so the mining sector in particular, and the ministry more inclusive and more gender responsive, and more inclusive, especially in including women in a sector that's really been male dominated. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass it over to our experts, and then we'll come back and we'll chat a little bit with them. So Wayne, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, everyone. It's quite intimidating to be joining such a time, especially with the people we have on the panel. So again, thank you very much. So let me start by just saying that it's been my pleasure to be a part of this in many ways. One is because this was quite unique in that we were able to bring a real attention to a victim-centered and trauma-informed approach. We know that from history that there's a great deal of trainings that go on in human trafficking, and they're extremely useful and helpful, but I do believe that we've missed that mark when it came to understanding exactly how the victim's needs need to be met. And this was our main goal that we had in Jordan, my partner, Andrea Wojtek, and I. So what is victim-centered approach when assisting a survivor of trafficking? This was the biggest thing that I drove, or that we drove, for the time that we've been in Jordan. And those were three words: needs, protection, and concerns. We really made it simple and kept it simple because we wanted the participants of the advanced and the basic course to be able to walk away clearly understanding what their requirements were, what they could take back to their place of work. So we've focused on the needs, the protection, and the concerns of survivors to ensure compassionate and sensitive delivery of services in a non-judgmental way. Extremely important for us to be able to set our biases to the side when we're interviewing victims of trauma, victims of domestic abuse, victims of trafficking. So just hint on those would be, one is that we taught the officers, both male and female. It was very important that we kept our SDGs there, which was making sure that we had an equal balance of male and female representation. And the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the police structure there, were very helpful in making sure that we had that balance. Also, we wanted to to make sure that they prioritize listening. Were they listening clearly to the victim's needs? Second was to avoid re-traumatizing that victim. And how do we do that? Well, we do that simply by going back to the words that I said before, and that was needs, protection, and concerns. I know that it sounds like I'm lecturing you on just one more back again real quick. I know I only have 5 minutes and I'm going to make my time, but it was really important for us to be able to make sure that we're getting it across that needs, protection, and concerns were the main parts of this. Making sure that we focused on their safety. We had to make them feel comfortable, that their rights, which are covered by the SDG, access to justice for all. There should be a fair and ethical approach when it comes to justice for everyone. And we wanted the victims, thank you, and give back as much control to the survivors as feasible. And one thing that we did on that was making sure that simple things like making sure during the interview process that you don't close the door of where you're interviewing the victim unless you ask the victim. Those simple things help to cover needs, protection, and concerns. Next slide, please. Victim-centered and trauma-informed approach, again, considers the individual's needs of the survivor and tailors that protection accordingly. Every case is different. And this is what we drove home for the investigators, was the importance of that. One, they had a right, many of these, whether the exploitation occurred for sexual or for labor, which we all know from the SDGs, that they're entitled to come to a safe place of employment and expect a decent work area. Well, clearly they were not stepping into that because they fell for different type of scams, if you will, and were brought into these environments of exploitation. Next, where the survivor's needs and concerns should be priority, whether the survivor participates in the criminal case as a witness or not. Now, this is a problem that we see even in North America now, that if the victim doesn't testify, then we don't prosecute. Well, this is what we spent, especially in the advanced course, was getting the investigators to be creative, come up with ways that their case could depend on other aspects or other bits of evidence minus that of the victim. Then we take the pressure off the victim. Again, what needs protection in a non-judgmental way? And this is what we drove home for those times that we were doing the training. Last slide there, please, if you don't mind. Again, I've covered this, goals 5, 16, and 8. Extremely important. And we started this, and before we even got what they refer to as boots on ground, before we were there doing the assessment, we made sure that the request was there for an equal balance of gender. And that worked well because they were all seated, males in one table, females in the one table, males in the one table. So we did get there with the representation that we needed, but what we did is encourage them to move to various tables to equal that balance of experience, that balance of gender. Males and females were very eager to work together, and we're quite lucky in that environment. They were, again, eager to do that. So the last slide, I think, that should cover, yeah, okay, sorry, that's my last slide. So let me briefly talk about the challenges. Challenges we all experience are logistics. That's just the way it is. I have to say that the biggest challenge that I dealt with personally was a personal challenge, and that was making sure that I did justice for the survivors. If I could not walk away, or we could not, if we walked away from that training and the officers did not have a better understanding of being able to provide safety, needs, and concerns in a non-judgmental way for the victim, then I would have felt like we failed. And that only came, getting past that risk or that hurdle only came when we were able to make the victims come alive in the training. And that came through in the interviewing and the investigation stage, when we actually began to set the officers at with actual training, scenario-based training that brought it to life for them. And they began to realize really what is a victim who comes from a post-conflict country already, steps into an environment where she or he are being exploited sexually. How do we help them? And I think for me, that was probably the biggest challenge, was getting that across to those officers, that we were there for the needs of the victims. The investigation is second itself, but the victim comes first in every aspect, whether it's investigation or operational. So again, I think I've done my 5. It was indeed a pleasure, and a pleasure to work in Jordan, a pleasure to be part of TAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And yeah, I mean, not only, did you do such a great job, very rarely do we have an ask to continue the work, but in this case, you've been asked to continue the work in that area to deepen the knowledge on this huge issue that's, as we know, Jordan is a big receptor of many, many migrants from all over the Middle East. And so that's fantastic that you really, thank you. And it's great to have you from London, Ontario. So now we're off to Montreal with Sally. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you so much, Wayne, for a wonderful presentation, for the great work. Thank you, everyone. Je dois dire que je suis ravie d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui, de pouvoir vraiment partager notre expérience en général, mais aussi dans notre initiative en Tunisie. Very, very thrilled and happy, and was super excited. I was looking forward to our exchange today to share with you our experiences in Tunisia. So I'm thrilled to have been part of this and to continue to be part of this initiative in Tunisia on gender equality and women's entrepreneurship. And our main partner here is the Ministry of Women, Family, Children, and Seniors in Tunisia. And we are supporting the second phase of a program, a national program for women entrepreneurship in Tunisia. That's the photo of the launching of our training with our Her Excellency, our ambassador in Tunisia, Lorraine Diguet, as well as the representative from the ministry. But just to mention, the aim of our initiative was to, collaborate with the ministry and to exchange and reinforce capacities on gender equality, gender analysis, on best practices when it comes to women entrepreneurship, as well as women's financial inclusion. This is very directly contributing, I must say, to the SDGs. And SDG 5 with, for example, one of the indicators there was on women's equal participation and rights to economic resources, as well as including financial services. It also contributes directly to to the SDG 8, which is on decent work and economic growth. And they're also, it really contributes to both of them. And of course, to the FIAP, as Christopher has already mentioned. Our approach was basically to build, to exchange and reinforce capacities on the topic, and going from a range of knowing understanding more and more what gender is about, gender equality, using GBA plus the gender-based analysis, that is a tool that is immensely used in Canada as well as abroad, as a basis for devising programs, informing programs like this national program, and how to implement it with a gender lens, how to conceive it and implement it with a gender lens, and also tailoring, having contextually tailored support, as well as a toolkit that can really whereby the participants and ministry staff can really apply this learning into their day-to-day activities. So I would like to take you through the journey, because this is the part where really, how did it work? And you'll see when our presentation comes along, it's basically such kind of partnerships are like really cultivating a tree. Really, and it starts with, honestly, it's about building and fostering a partnership with our partners, meeting them where they are, really, moving together with them. And I must say that this kind of partnership requires building trust, fostering trust with our partners. It also requires us in a sense of humility, of putting ourselves in their shoes and really valorizing and appreciating the different challenges that they are facing in the different contexts, while also honestly valorizing existing competencies, experiences that they bring. That's why I intentionally was using the exchange of experiences and exchange of capacities versus some other alternatives. I must say that also the alignment, part of this partnership building is really finding the alignment between our interventions, the needs, and how to really find this fit where our partnership actually makes sense, adds value, that it comes to be really contextually relevant. Forgive me for repeating it, but it's so key. It's not only about what we provide and the type of support and resources that we provide, but it's also that it's making sense to the reality. And I must say, it's actually a changing reality. So remaining flexible and really agile within this process to continue to be, how can you say, responsive to the evolving needs is something that is so key. I would also, leveraging in part of this, building trust and so on, is leveraging on our wealth of commonalities, versus our differences, and finding agents of change within our partners, where they can really help us move along and move different agendas, including gender equality and others, along while maneuvering through the power dynamics within the different ministries and within the ministry, for example, within our partnership. I must also say that within our team, as well as externally, there are also super powerful change agents. I must shout out to David from our team, as well as from the embassy, Nadia Guta, if you're hearing, and us, as well as I must also highlight the role of our ambassador, who is a wonderful leader, aspiring leader, astounding icon, and wonderful representation of Canada, who was there in the previous photo and provided just an impeccable presentation of our values and the values that Canada brings on gender equality, that gave so much weight to such intervention. She used her power and voice, and it's amazing. I must say, binding commitment, as well as really enhancing this new reflexes and enhanced capacities together and experience with this enriched exchange. So to be able to achieve those results in this journey, what I call journey, as well as communicate what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what hasn't worked too often is the most part where we get the learning. Thank you so much. I hope I respected the time.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. We are running in time, but I just want to mention, you're a new arrival to Canada. We have many new arrivals to Canada, and part of this project is really manifesting and sharing Canadian values. It's very much a part of our approach. It's also part of what we're actually, doing in terms of sharing experiences. So that's great. Philip, you're not too far away, or at least you're based not too far away in North Vancouver. Over to you. And sorry, we are running a little bit. We want to have a few minutes for questions. So over to you now.
All right. Thanks, Christopher. And thanks, Sally and Wayne. So my project is in Guatemala with the Secretariat Against Sexual Violence, Exploitation, and Trafficking in Persons. It's a central government agency that works to coordinate efforts against these crimes, both in prevention and prosecution. So, they have a special position in that they work with government agencies, the justice sector, as well as civil society organizations and international donors. And they identified a need and approached the Canadian Embassy, sort of saying, well, we have all these different partners and we actually have information from all these partners about their programming. It would be great if we could integrate all this data to better understand these phenomena and better, coordinate our programming. So in comes, the TAP-EDM project to support, and I was contracted to help not only develop a technological platform to provide statistical analysis, but more importantly, to understand the data and understand what it's all about. And that's where a GBA plus approach that Sally had already mentioned comes in. It's really about contextualizing information. Data is just numbers on a screen, but until you really understand what's behind those numbers is where the power comes in. And especially in these crimes where, for example, the Secretariat has, of course, information on police investigations or sentencing from the courts related to these crimes, but it clearly is not even the tip of the iceberg. It's very small, the amount of these crimes that are truly reported and then lead to convictions. So what's what we've identified is much more exciting is the other information that they have. For example, they have information from the Ministry of Health on child and adolescent pregnancies, or from schools on the Ministry of Education on dropout rates, or the missing women's alert, or the missing children's alert. So tying all these things together can give us a better picture of where vulnerable populations might be. And if you switch to the next slide, then that really brings us towards our efforts towards SDG 5, which is gender equality, and SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, in developing justice equity. Not only are there certain populations that are more at risk of these crimes, but often those same populations have significant barriers to accessing justice and support services. So we need to direct our efforts. For example, the Secretariat has these vans, 7 of these vans that they send throughout the country, and they'll provide information to women and children and migrants on their rights in their native languages and in their indigenous languages, so that they know, within their local context. And Sally mentioned this in terms of context. That's when really we really make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals in a localized way. So ultimately, the data not only helps direct programming, but it'll tell us about the impact of this programming and help direct future programming through transparency and better coordination. And that's where I think this combination of international expertise, Canadian expertise, to the local context really can be powerful. So that's what I'm doing in Guatemala. I think now it's Litsky and Alejandra in Colombia.
Yes, yeah. I just shout out to you. Thank you very much, Philip. I think it's very clear, many aspects of the project, and really contributing from a human rights-based approach as well, right? And you're also contributing to equity. Can't remember which one it is. It 9, I want to say. I'm not sure. It's one of those there, or 10 SDG. So, I mean, there's just so many there. Last but not least, Litsi and Alondra really contributing to, a sector that Canada has a lot of experience in, but, integrating gender equality. What does that look like with the mining sector in Colombia? Litsi, I think you're starting.
Alondra, my partner.
Alondra, dale.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alondra Majid, and as Christopher is mentioning, along with my colleague Litsi Baeza, we're working in the project of gender equality in the mining and energy sector in Colombia. We're partnering with the Ministry of Mines and Energy, as well as their 7 affiliated entities. The purpose of this project is to increase the capacity of the personnel of the ministry and the entities through the development of training and preparation of guides, as well as providing technical support to integrate a gender-based analysis in how they develop their policies, protocols, programs, terms of reference, all those documents that they use as a reference for how they do their work. One of the main goals of the government is to better integrate and to increase the involvement of women in the workplace and in the community when they're working in projects with the community, particularly in the energy transition framework. The government has done a lot of work in regards to gender equality. Part of this initiative is for us to provide recommendations as how they can implement their guidelines of gender equality, which these guidelines have 4 main pillars that are very connected to the SDG 5 of gender equality, which is linking women to direct jobs, decision-making positions, community participation, and in the value chain. Increase and promote a culture of gender equality, articulate and coordinate actions for the sector at the intersectoral level, at the institutional level, as well as prevention of different types of violence against women in the industry and in the communities where they work, those communities of influence. with all this work, with these pillars, with these guidelines that they have built along the many years, they have their particular action plans. So the ministry can then support the participation of women who are linked in the mining energy sector at the different levels, from the operation, supply chain, the development of implementation of projects, involving women in community participation, in community consultation, in the decision-making process, as well as in the development of actions to prevent and address cases of gender-based violence. So we can go to the next slide.
Thank you, Alondra. Yeah, so the government is really committed to advance gender equity and equality, and to really take a look at how to implement gender-based analysis in all its aspects, including preventing and addressing gender-based violence and sexual harassment across the affiliated industries and projects that they do across the country. They're really looking for concrete actions that they can really integrate into their daily work. And we were just in Colombia a few weeks ago, actually, to deliver Train the Trainer capacity building around gender equity and analysis and mainstreaming. The training took place over 2 days, and on the third day, we really chose a relevant workplace process or policy to look at through the GBA plus analysis lens. We also facilitated focus group discussions with the majority of the affiliated entities to really inform our gender mainstreaming strategy for the ministry as the project comes to a close. It's important at this stage to take into consideration governmental changes that have happened over the past year in Colombia, as well as the new focus they have on gender equity that will take more of an intersectional approach. The ministry and the affiliated agencies are really at different levels of readiness. A lot of work has taken place. Their guidelines are key pillars that they're looking to move towards implementation with a few tweaks considering the governmental changes. But organizational change and contracting policies are a big kind of barrier and one of the challenges that the ministry will face as they try to implement gender equality analysis into their work. Internal culture and overall perception of the communities around women is very male-dominated, in a male-dominated industry, are huge challenges. So the Ministry of Mining and Energy in Colombia is really taking a look at how to promote the inclusion of women, particularly when it comes to post-secondary and kind of college training and what that might look like. So maybe partnering with other organizations that can help with that promotion and inclusion of women, particularly within the sector. I just want to thank you. Thank you very much to all the experts in this room as well.
Yeah, thank you, Litzy, and thank you, Alondra. So great, you know, working with such talented Canadians from all across the country. You guys are piping in, I think, from Edmonton today. 4 different provinces represented today from our Canadian experts, and I know we work in, and we're drawing from other provinces as well. Real life examples of how, you know, ordinary Canadians with some experience really contributing to the SDGs 5, 8, 11, 13, 16 are some of the top sort of SDGs that we've been contributing to. So we've got 5 minutes. You know, any questions? I want to give an opportunity. I know either Gabrielle is monitoring the chat. I didn't see any moments ago, but are there any questions or comments you'd like to make either to us or one of our experts? No? Okay. We'll use this time then to maybe have some chit chat between the 5 experts that we have here. We've talked a little bit about some of the challenges. We've talked a little bit about, you know, how we're trying to meet these objectives. And you know, we've also talked a little bit about the increased visibility. We've certainly contributed to that. And great, thank you, Sally, about, you know, talking about our diplomats abroad who are really helping to promote Canadian values and how, you know, in doing so, we're contributing to developing the capacity of generally bureaucrats, you know, public servants in other countries to really take into consideration many of these, you know, issues, and, you know, very strong on the gender equality. We've also mentioned Gender-Based Analysis Plus, which is the tool that the Canadian government uses writ large, right across government. And we've been getting a lot of requests to actually share that tool in governments right across the globe. And I'm glad three of the initiatives presented today, mentioned this, which is very important. Do one of my colleagues want to sort of pipe up any of the challenges or hopes, or in terms of how we're contributing to the SDGs, or some of the challenges in doing so? No? Should I throw a question?
Yeah,
Yeah,
could
go
I
ahead,
ask,
Sally.
could I say about the hopes maybe? Is it okay
Yeah.
that I if it's possible, because it was super inspiring to be in a room talking about the topic of gender equality, that goes into the fabrics of different societies in different ways, but the aha moments, and there's a lot of hope out there. There was a lot of positive reception about it, and meeting, understanding how it actually can happen. And I'm sure all my colleagues can resonate to that. And those change agents that we had in each one of our initiatives are going to be the seed for changes within their communities, not only from the ministries and our partners, but also within their circles. So that gives a lot of hope with the discussions and the questions and so on. I don't want to take much space.
Yeah, no, and that's often what we're doing, right? We're trying to find those champions that really get it, and then enable them to give them some tools and enable them. And just sometimes it's just self-confidence in sharing that hope and in really engendering that change where they work. Yes, Wayne, over to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the hope aspect was the sustainability, which was something that was quite concerning to our project, and it could also be to many projects, because you have to know when it's time to arrive and when it's time to leave. You don't want to overstay your welcome in any particular, because we're only there to encourage, to support, and then we go back home. And I have to say, the hope for me, and you were very right on that haha moment, was when they had asked for that extra bit of support on how do we take these initiatives, these suggestions, and they put them in and make them part of their own selves. How do we implement those? And this is where we need Canada to help implement. And that, for me and for Andrea, was a real haha moment, or aha moment for us, to see that success where they want us to help them with that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point, Wayne, and we see that elsewhere as well. Like, this isn't, it may seem like a bit of a drop in the bucket, but actually Canada has been investing in these areas for a long time. I've been working with the mining industry in Colombia. I've visited probably about 5 or 6 different mines in Colombia in the last decade, and I know that our company, Alinea International, has just wrapped up the project Comunica, which was all about developing the capacity of the mining sector through the Ministry of Mines and Energy. And this is like you guys, Litsi and Alondra, you guys have been following up on that and really focused in on the gender piece as well. So this is important work in how we do that. So I do want to draw your attention to the Mentimeter, and we'd love to get some feedback about this as we wrap up. So please do sign on and contribute to this. This is the first time we've done something like this, and we're so happy we were able to do it together, ensemble, and in this great initiative across the country to really see how everyday Canadians that are, from all over the place in this lovely country are really contributing to and really exercising their contributions to, global citizenship, and how we're doing so. So please do give us some feedback. We look forward to that, and want to just thank all of you, Sally, Wayne, Alondra, Philip, and Litsi, for a great job, and Gabrielle, and our whole team who really pulled this together. So thank you, everyone, for your participation today and just being here. Thanks to all of you that are online. So take care, and we'll let it be there. We're ending right on time, or just over a minute. But I want to thank you all. This has been great, and just a short and quick snapshot, but real contribution. So thanks for all the great work that you guys are doing, and yeah. travel on and contribute on to the SDGs.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank
Great
you.